Proportional Response. Book 1, Chapter 14, Part 15. Assets, Plans and Hopes. Caslor raised an eyebrow at his friend's Alton secretary, who sat there on the screen, looking slightly sheepish. Henry, however, smiled at her and waved a hand in a dismissive gesture. "I don't expect you to run everything you do by me, love. I'm your boss, not your master. And you certainly did the right thing to get the intel folks involved. You surprise me on a regular basis, but so far they have all been good surprises. The question still stands though. Even if you think he was ripe to be talked into defecting, what makes you think he'd be willing to be a mole for us?" She smirked at him. "Money, a lot of it. Intel cleared me to offer him a certain figure and coached me in the negotiation. I offered him 2/3 of the figure, and his eyes nearly went red in delight. But he held out." She then turned to face the screen, which Caslor felt amused to find put her staring at him. "I am willing to bet that, between our two governments, we would be willing to offer him a much higher salary while he was acting as a mole, plus a one-time bonus promised upon his extraction, plus his promotion would gain him more salary from fee sultans, plus the fact that he absolutely hates the jerk who handed us Fatcat and, well..." Caslor's eyes narrowed, but to his surprise, Eldia spoke first. "Esruk, I thought you were sweet on that human corporal." Esruk's eyes went wide and she held up both her hands. "Oh, no, nothing like that. Really, Eldia, you get the oddest ideas sometimes." Eldia smirked slightly, and Caslor shared a grin with his wives as Esruk's mouth turned down into a frown and she stared mock daggers at the Venter woman. "Oh, you... No, nothing like that. I was trying to say, before I was so rudely interrupted." Esruk shot Eldia a sharp, but oddly affectionate, glance when the blue woman giggled slightly. "That the man is not an idiot, and realizes it is unlikely that the Sultans will come out on top of this when the dust settles. You see..." Jake shot the woman an odd look, then turned to Henry and cocked an eyebrow at him. Henry responded by rolling his eyes, and both men grinned slightly as Esruk continued. "Vandor isn't fighting for voting rights because he knows it is a losing game. There are maybe a half-dozen people a year who get granted a vote, and even then, they are only first-generation voters with a single vote. Maybe another dozen or so are allowed to marry into a family, ensuring that their kids will get a vote, but that doesn't grant them much. Thousands, if not tens of thousands, however, get ground up and spit out trying. He decided he didn't like those odds. Backing humanity, however..." Caslor felt a grin flash across his face. He let it stand, then leaned back and steepled his fingers. "Is a winning bet, and this male of yours is smart enough to see it. It also means that he will stay bought, unless the entire situation goes so badly out of control that the humans, and by extension the rest of us, are inarguably losing." The image of Henry gave a dark grin. "And, if that happens, we are going to be in bad enough shape that concerns over this turncoat will be lost in a rounding error." The human looked at his companions a moment, then his eyes darted across the screen. "Well, I'm in favor of letting Esruk approach the man in question." Henry turned his attention to the Zoltan. "I assume that you have a way to contact him, even though they surely have all of their hackers working overtime." Esruk smiled and nodded. "I have managed to befriend a few finals since I got here. I learned how useful such friends could be many years ago. No one even notices the Findle. I should be able to get into the bar tonight." Caslor made a sweeping gesture with his hand, then smacked the table hard enough that the screen jiggled a little. "Excellent. I motion that we..." Euro cleared her throat beside him, and he slammed his mouth closed. If there was anything he'd learned over the years, it was to stop and listen if his wives had something important enough to say that they wanted to interrupt him, and that went triple for his mousy, quiet Euro. Euro continued to wave her hands in the air, with her eyes focused on her private display as she spoke. "Could this Findle friend of yours be trusted to drop this Vandor our data packet and offer without trying to view them?" Esruk harumphed and grinned at his wife. "This Findle can be trusted to give Vandor whatever I ask him to, and promptly forget that he did anything of the sort, much less try to find anything out about why." Euro nodded, then suddenly stopped waving her hands and stuck her finger into the data crystal port of the computer. Here is a program that will open only for him. I was able to find Vandor's genetic profile in our Intel databanks, so the crystal is genetically encoded. It contains our offer to him, a handful of electronic dead drop boxes, some physical drop locations, an emergency code he can use if he needs immediate extraction, payment terms, account numbers, and the decryption key that the Aldens will need to get their data back. Please have Jake, and probably a couple of his people, double-check my code. I used templates I've used before for similar things, but I did just slam it together on the fly. Henry cocked a single eyebrow at the woman, and nodded in respect as he slid a data crystal into the port on his own computer. Kasler caught his eye and made sure the human could see his amused look. Underestimate my mousy wife because she isn't so outspoken, will you? I have to admit, if I had any fear of my wives, she'd be the one to scare me the most. Henry responded with a rueful grin and a nod of respect. He then turned to Yoro. Your Grace. Kasler threw a wadded piece of paper at the camera. It was the principle of the thing. Henry winked at him, then continued. I am not a programmer myself, but I have some general idea of the level of what you just slammed together. Thank you, and please accept my deepest respect. Yoro gave him a sunny smile. Of course, Henry. Always happy to do my bit when I can. Henry nodded to her. I think that covers the situation. Thank you, all of you, for all of this. It is bold, brilliant, and could give us an incredible edge. I had high hopes and high expectations when I found out you'd be working with me directly. You've exceeded them. Kasler smiled and nodded, but Yoro beat him to it. The feeling is mutual, Henry. Now, I am going to drag my husband and wife to bed while you get that crystal double-checked. Good night. Vashna lay in bed, contentment and sadness warring in her body, as she lay next to her dozing boyfriend and read the latest tidbits provided by the Xultan hacker-turned-intelligence minus asset. He'd only managed to get information out to them twice over the week since they gave him the keys to his ascension, but some of it had been truly choice bits, including the fact that the Xultan ambassador actually had all of Prime Minister Kilintar's login credentials and override codes. Aunt Yoro is brilliant, but forcing that fat cat to give us that decryption key, then figuring out how to use it, that was truly inspired. No wonder Mother keeps going on about learning from her. Annabelle shifted beside her. You seem pensive, my love. I know that I leave in the morning, but don't worry. It is not like I am going to do anything stupid while on the human warship, nor, like Henry, would let anything happen to his brother. It will only be a couple of weeks. Of course, those weeks will be hard without the exercise I have become so accustomed to. The man ran a hand up her leg and grinned. She shivered, her body responding to the touch. The lusty joy of his touch brought a blush to her hands and a smile to her face, though she had to force the smile for a moment as the joy rolled over into sadness. I don't have to tell him tonight. Not that. He knows I'm highborn, just not quite how high. I could string this affair on long distance until after the war. If I wanted, it would be easier to dodge over a distance after all. Oh, crap. He noticed that I've gone pensive again. She smiled, pouted her lips a little, and leaned towards him for a kiss. They came up for air after a few minutes, and she stared into those gorgeous, beautiful eyes. Such a wonderful, attentive, beautiful man. I am so sorry, my love, for what I have done to you, and for the strange scrap of cowardice that keeps me from telling you the truth. It is just... You are the only man outside my family who has ever looked at me and seen. Well, me, and I want to hold on to that. Is it selfish? She felt a tear roll down her cheek and nearly started as Annabelle sat bolt upright, moved his head from hers and looked at her with concern. She gave him a smile and spoke before he could. I am sorry, sweetheart. I wanted tonight to be perfect before I send you off, but... She looked away from him, steeling her resolve, then met his eyes. He deserves for me to at least be forthright in the part I am telling him. Damn it. You know that I am highborn. We have discussed around the topic enough. This means that, despite reaching my majority, I have obligations, and A little less ability to get entirely off apron strings, as the humans would say, than some people do.
She held up a hand as he tried to speak.
Please, this is hard enough to get out as it is. Just let me work my way through it.
He assumed a relaxed posture and an encouraging smile, then nodded.
Thank you. Anyway, this means I have a little less freedom than I might, and when the matron of my house gives orders, sometimes I can't deny them. This is one of those times. My mother is all too aware of what is happening here, what is going to happen, and how things are heating up, and is no longer okay with me staying here. I am being recalled home, my love. I will be departing the day after tomorrow. I tried to appeal to you, to Kessler, but then I found out he's the one who recommended I be sent home.
She had to fight for a moment to get the irritation at Uncle Kessler down, but there wasn't anything she could do.